Welcome to Liberty Hill, where faith, freedom, and family take center stage. I'm Sherrie Conley, a mom, a grandmother, a former state representative, a former educator, a child advocate, and someone who believes in protecting our values for the next generation.
And I'm Kendra Wesson, a former state school board member and previous board member of a charter in Norman. I'm also a passionate voice for families and advocate for liberty, and together we are diving deep into the conversations that matter most to you.
If you're concerned about education, parental rights, protecting children, and the future of our nation and our state, you've come to the right place.
We're here to challenge the status quo, speak truth boldly, and equip you with the knowledge and tools to stand up for what's right. After all, iron sharpens iron.
Yeah, that's good. Each episode will tackle the tough issues, whether it's the battle over school choice, threats to our constitutional freedom, or exposing the agendas shaping the futures of our children.
And we're not just here to talk. We're here to inspire action, offer solutions, and bring hope to families who feel like they're fighting this battle alone.
So if you believe in faith, freedom, and the power of strong families, join us on Liberty Hill each week, Mondays at 6 p.m.
Be sure to subscribe, follow, and share, and let's build a community of bold voices that will not be silenced.
Welcome to Liberty Hill, where we take a stand and we never back down. Well, hello. Welcome everyone to Liberty Hill. I'm Sherrie Conley and
I'm Kendra Wesson. It's nice to see you all again.
Yeah, it's good to see everyone. Things are going very well. They're progressing very well. And as you can tell, we are doing a really good job of updating our equipment and getting our set put together and fixed up the way we want to, and until maybe future projects, right?
If only they could see that our flurry of activity where we're trying to remember how things connect. And today, producer threatened to send over an intern to help us, but we managed to get it going.
We don't need an intern.
No.
We can figure it out.
We're there.
Hey, I've had years in the classroom where I had to figure things out on my own. I didn't have an intern coming and setting my equipment up for me. So I think we got this figured out.
Yeah.
All right. So today we are going to talk about education, and we're going to talk about student outcomes and a couple of pieces of legislation that are making their way through the House and the Senate. And so, we're going to dive right in. So you and I have had many conversations about literacy and about outcomes and how we raise those outcomes. It is a huge issue in the state of Oklahoma. We've got roughly 30% of our young people are literate. And so we've got 70% of our kids that are failing literacy. And so we have got to figure out how to fix that, right?
Going on to graduate high school and still not being able to read well.
Yeah.
And then going to OU, OSU, or whatever university they choose and having to take remedial reading classes, which I promise you, the universities don't mind that extra tuition. Parents, they are not having a problem with that at all.
That's right. That's right. It's adding to the cost of higher education.
It is.
And where we are actually funding the public education system in order for our young people to be able to read. I read a book prior to going into the legislature that talked about, it was a young woman who had started teaching in a school in New York City. And she talked about how the classrooms were chaos, and that and it's called Educating All God's Children is the name of it, by the way. She talked about how at the point that she was at, that it really was more of a daycare center for youth at the junior high and the high school level. and that they were actually graduating from high school and barely being able to read on an eighth grade level. And, that happens with our special ed students. But it should not be happening with our students who are mainstream, who have no learning disabilities.
Right.
Those young people should be graduating, being able to read on a 12th grade or higher grade level. And so let's talk about some of the issues that we see happening. Do you have a comment first, or do we want to dive right into?
Well, what I've noticed in my experience in this over the last 5 years is that outcomes are directly related to reading. Reading is the foundation for every other subject. There is just almost no path forward without it being a good, strong reader at grade level.
Yeah, that's right. And so, and one of the things that, unless you're an educator, you don't really know this fact, but that when you get into third and fourth grade, you are no longer learning to read, but you are reading to learn. And so those formative years in pre-K, kindergarten, first, second grade, it is very important that you have a highly qualified teacher in those classrooms. And so let's talk a little bit about the state of Oklahoma. And I meant to look it up. Darn it. Maybe we can look it up on the break. But we have more and more emergency certified teachers in our classrooms.
Yeah.
I meant to look up the number this year.
Oh gosh, I know last year, but the first half of the year, we were well over 4,500.
4,500. Yeah. So I think in like 2011, we were at 32. So over the last 14 years, we've gone from 32 emergency certifieds to 4,500. That's crazy.
It's even higher because that wasn't even a full year. We will have to look at that because
yeah. And so, and think about this, that I believe we roughly have 40,000 teachers in the state of Oklahoma. So 4,500 is just a hair over 10%.
Wow.
Yeah. Yeah. That's kind of, it's kind of scary to think about.
And these are the things that we want to share with you guys, because as shocking as they are to us who've been in this field, it has to be shocking to you to hear these statistics and what's really happening behind the scenes in education.
Yeah. So when I was in the legislature, one of the things that I said that I would absolutely not do is I would not support a bill that put anything other than a highly qualified teacher coming out of a teacher prep program into the kindergarten, pre-K, first and second grades. That was my cutoff. If it said anything about teaching early childhood and being an adjunct or being an elementary or an early childhood emergency certified, I said no, I will not support that because those formative years are so important.
So they're that important that you wouldn't trust those years with anyone except an expert that's went through college, went through the system, passed the certification.
Yes.
And we're talking early childhood, elementary education, and of course, special education. Those three fields have a specialty requirement that can affect a child for a lifetime.
Absolutely. Now, we do have a boot camp program where the special ed teachers who are not special ed, and I really would have to go back and look at it because I don't recall whether or not you had to have a teacher certification and able to go through a 6-week boot camp in order. I think any emergency certified teacher can go through a 6-week boot camp and be a special education teacher at that point. And I just don't believe that is enough training for our special ed students. I mean, because they're the ones that need the most specialized care. I mean, it's called special education for a reason, right?
Yes.
So, so let's dive in. How much time do we have before our break?
We are ready to take a break now, so you must have felt the rhythm.
Okay.
Hey there, I'm JJ Humphrey, and I'm inviting you to join me on a journey every week with my podcast, Elephant in the Room. This is where we dig deep, expose corruption, stand up for taxpayers, and defend your rights. every single episode. But I can't do this alone. That's where you come in. By signing up and supporting this mission for as little as $5 a month, you'll help me continue to shine a light on the issues that matter most to all of us. With your support, we can reach more people, uncover more truths, and fight the battles that need fighting. Join the movement. Be a part of Elephant in the Room. Thank you, and I'll see you on the inside.
Okay, we are looking at, so emergency certified teachers 23 to 24 was over 5,000.
Oh my goodness.
So so that would be not like I was thinking January to December being a year, but August to May. And then
say the number again.
Over 5,000.
Over 5,000 emergency certified teachers in the state of Oklahoma for the 23-24 school year. Okay, so let's talk about the reason why we're bringing this subject up today. And there are two bills that are currently going through the legislature. One of them is House Bill 2125, and I have it right here. So 2125, the language is changing. So currently it says the State Board of Education shall promulgate rules authorizing adjunct teachers who shall be required to meet standard certification. All right, so an adjunct teacher is required to have a bachelor's degree, right?
Right.
So, but it says that they have to be specialized persons with distinguished qualifications in their field, which I'm okay with that.
If somebody math.
Yes. So if somebody goes to school and they have a degree in math and they want to teach 5th grade, 6th grade on up mathematics, I don't have a problem with that because they have a specialized degree in math, right? And then let's say that somebody has a history degree and they want to go teach social studies and history. I'm great with that. I want someone to be trained in classroom management and some of the other things that you need in order to be an effective classroom teacher. But I believe that if you are an expert in your field, all of those other things you can learn fairly quickly, right? You've got the expertise in the curriculum that is going to make you not necessarily able to teach it, but with
at least
a little
know
bit
what's going on.
At least know what they're, what the expectations are and what they need to know. So I'm okay with that. What 2125 does is it says, and this is new language that they're wanting to add, and this is passed the House. Adjunct teachers shall be authorized to teach at all grade levels, including in early childhood education programs. And so one of the things that I was curious about is, okay, what kind of degree, bachelor's degree, would you have to have in order to be a distinguished qualification in their field? And I could not come up with anything
for early childhood.
Other than
an early childhood degree.
Which you have to go through an early childhood program in a teacher college in order to get that. And so this is very concerning to me that, like I said, I was okay with adjunct teachers going in as long as they were required to have a bachelor's degree and be an expert in their field. But when you start putting an adjunct into a classroom to teach pre-emergent and emergent readers, and those are the pre-emergent are the ones that do not know how to read yet, and then emerging are the ones who are learning how to read. I don't want to put somebody in there who does not know what they're doing.
During K through 3, which we've identified as the most crucial years for the foundation of success for later years.
Now, for clarification's sake, early childhood is going to be pre-K through first, sometimes second is considered early childhood, I think.
Okay.
So that's going to put someone who doesn't know phonics, which is the basis of learning how to read effectively. And and here's what's interesting about this is that phonics actually allows those kids who have dyslexia and other learning type disabilities, it is better for them to learn how to read using phonics than any of those other methods of learning. That kids who are taught the three cueing, they can get it, but they're going to be better readers and more proficient and have better comprehension when they learn to read phonetically. And that's the reason why we've seen a decrease in our education outcomes and our reading outcomes,
Yes.
is because they're not teaching children the basics of the English language through phonemic awareness. So I have an issue with this. What has been your experience? Tell me what you know about um, approving certifications, adjunct and emergency. Is there a difference between the emergency and the adjunct? I wanted to back up just for a minute and talk about
I
that.
haven't thought about that in a while.
Yeah.
Yes, they are different. But there's one thing I wanted to point out real quickly when we talk about how important it is that you be reading well by third grade.
Mhm.
There are actually states that decide the amount of future prison space they need
Mhm.
based on the number of students that are reading well in third grade. This is
Yes.
how important it is that your kids read well,
Yes.
and that parents. So when we talk about the outcomes and the things that affect those outcomes, we decided early childhood is key.
Mhm.
The top thing is highly qualified teachers
Mhm.
teaching science of reading who
Yes.
know how. So there's methods to that. There's ways to do it in a certain rhythm, right?
Yeah.
And then you have the support at home of the parents, reading
Mhm.
at home, reading street signs, identifying letters on car tags, all the ways you can be reading throughout the day without having to sit down in a 20-minute block, but making it a little bit easier to get that time in. Just
Yeah.
get the time in. And then of course science of reading. So emergency trained teachers are certified, I'm sorry, is when a school comes to the State Board of Education and says, listen, we do not have a science teacher right now.
Mhm.
We've got to have one immediately. And they'll be emergency certified.
Mhm.
They can ask for that, board votes on it, and they choose that. So they are a little different.
Yeah. So, but with emergency certified, they still have to have a bachelor's degree, correct?
I believe so.
Yeah.
But I haven't looked at that in a
Yeah.
while.
So going into a classroom to
We've got it.
teach, you have to have a bachelor's degree of some kind to get either an emergency or an alternative or an adjunct certification in order to go in the classroom.
That's right. And so hold your thought, and
Okay.
we'll take a break, and then we'll pick this back up in
Okay.
a few minutes.
All right.
Welcome to Capital VIP Transport, where luxury meets convenience right here in Oklahoma City. We're not your typical limo service. We're building something exclusive, something personal, just for a small group of members who value comfort, flexibility, and the VIP experience. Imagine this: whenever you need to ride in style, whether it's a night out, airport run, special occasion, or last-minute plans, we've got a vehicle ready just for you. No stress. No surge pricing, just smooth, same-day service from people you know and trust. We're inviting only 25 individuals in the OKC area to join our Founders Club. As a member, you'll receive your very own VIP ride token every month, plus priority access to our fleet, premium service perks, and exclusive event invites. This isn't about showing off, it's about showing up in comfort, on your terms. We're putting the VIP back in Oklahoma City, and we want you to be part of it. Spots are limited, and once they're gone, they're gone. So if you're ready to ride like you mean it, go ahead and join us today. Click the button below, and I'll see you on the VIP list.
Okay. All right. Welcome back, everyone. And we were talking about early childhood education, how important it is for the highly qualified teacher, and of course, parent support. There's other things that are required for successful outcomes, but Today we are talking about teacher competencies, and specifically as it relates to two bills that are currently going through the legislature. So we've already had a short little conversation about House Bill 2125 that passed the House and has now gone over to the Senate. I don't know whether or not it has made it to the Education Committee agenda yet, but we wanted to talk about these two bills, and we wanted to talk about outcomes and how important it is that our teachers are well qualified. And so the other piece of legislation that we wanted to talk about today is Senate Bill 841. This also has passed the Senate. It is now in the House. Again, I don't know whether or not it has made it to an agenda or not, but we wanted to talk about this because what it appears is that these are two pieces of legislation that are actually opposing one another. And so let's talk a little bit about the language. So I'm going to read the language to you that is part of what is being changed. There's some other pieces in this legislation that are okay, but this is the one I believe that our colleges of education are so concerned about because of the difference. And you'll see what I'm talking about here in just a minute. All right, so the language, a teacher candidate or teacher may take the professional education or subject area portions of the examination subject to any limit imposed by the commission. So what they're saying is that in order to be able to teach at the high school level, you have to be certified and take a test in the target subject matter that you're going to be teaching it. Okay. Now, language, current law, the language says, except as otherwise provided for in this paragraph, certification in early childhood, like what we've been saying, pre-K through first or second, elementary, which goes to fifth or sixth grade. Some schools, the sixth graders are at the junior high. Some schools, it goes to fifth grade. And then, or special education shall require, okay, so that's a shall. They have to have it, a completion of an appropriate teacher education program approved by the commission. That's where the current language stops, right there for the requirements. They have to complete a program. Then it says, and this is new language, and effective July 1st, 2025, successful completion of a comprehensive reading instruction assessment. A reading instruction assessment. So in order to be able to teach early childhood, elementary, or special ed, you have to complete a reading instruction assessment.
If you're getting an education degree.
Yep.
But if you become an adjunct, you don't have to do any of that.
This requirement is not there.
That's insane.
And so we've got differences of expectations and specifically what we're concerned about right here is the early childhood piece of this, because, and I don't have a problem with them being able to prove that they know how to teach reading, right?
Right.
And I personally would not probably require it of the elementary unless they plan on teaching below third grade. I think that early childhood and the special ed, yes, probably is best that they have some kind of assessment to prove that they know how to teach reading. But if we're going to do that for this group of teachers who are going through a teacher program, a teacher education program, and they have to take a test that's $139, by the way, on top of the current $300 test that they already have to take. So this is on top of their test that they have to take in order to get their certificate. So we're telling them they're going through a teacher ed program. We're telling them they have to take a test to prove that they can teach reading. But we've got adjunct and emergency certifieds that we're allowing them through a new piece of legislation to go into an early childhood classroom.
Early childhood elementary education, but not special education.
But not special.
Right. Special
Right.
education, not an issue here.
Right.
Um,
On that law.
on that law.
But on this one, it is. They're saying
You must be, which I agree. You know, like we talked about,
yes.
special education, all the things that is a very specialized, highly trained, highly qualified teachers.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that feels really unfair if both of those were to pass.
Mm-hmm.
First of all, they would compete with each other.
Yes.
So what happens when you're in the, being a former legislator, what happens when you're in there and you have two pieces of legislation that if there's a prior bill, you can usually catch it and say, okay, this is crossing a prior bill. It's not going to work.
Yeah.
But when there's two pieces kind of passing in the night, one started in the House, one started in the Senate. Now they've crossed over.
Mm-hmm.
What are the fail safes? Is that calling our senator, calling our representative? What are the fail safes to stop those both from being approved?
Yeah. So, we, everyone needs to reach out to their senator and their House member and tell them, and I'm not going to say, because we have a teacher shortage, I'm not going to say that I am against the adjunct and the
Right.
the emergency certifieds, because obviously we've got 5,000, emergency certified and alternatively certified teachers in the classroom currently. I wonder, what would we have to do in order to be able to get 5,000 of our previously certified teachers who have left the classroom to come back?
Yes.
That's what we need to be working on, is figuring out, talking to those teachers who have left education, what would we have to do to get you back into the classroom?
And we have a huge chunk of merit pay
Mm-hmm.
just sitting at OSDE
Yes.
right now, everyone. Huge, millions, tens of millions,
Yeah.
I believe. I can't remember the exact number now.
Yeah.
Just sitting there because there are schools who are not implementing this merit-based pay.
Yeah.
And it's there and it's ready to go, and our kids are here, and we need teachers who are highly qualified. So I'm not sure what the holdup is there.
Well,
to use that funding.
Let me tell you what teachers say. Now,
What?
Now, this is, I'm not going to paint with a broad brush. I'm not going to say all teachers feel this way. But the teachers that I've talked to that are against merit pay, they're against it. And I completely understand this, because I was a witness of this. And actually something happened. So let me just tell you my story. I was at a school in Oklahoma City. I had a principal that said that if you do not, if your students do not pass the test at the end of the year, then you are not qualified to get above a 3 on the teacher leader, the TLE model assessment, right? It's the teacher assessment. And so I was one of those teachers that not all of my kids were passing the reading test, but I was in a very low performing school with kids who, come in from poverty and, all sorts of things against them that keeps them from being successful. I'm trying to use my words. So, I felt that I would not have gotten merit pay, even though, I know I was a good teacher and was very successful, had lots of growth in my classroom. But because not all of them were passing, according to this principal, I was not qualified to get higher than a 3, which would keep me from being able to get that merit pay. So there's more to the story. I want to tell more of it, but we are ready for another break. And so we will pick this up after the break.
Hey there, this is Representative J.J. Humphrey. I want to encourage all of Oklahoma's great patriots to sign up at okpatriots.net. By supporting these businesses, you are helping to uphold the values and principles that make this state great. Attending Patriot events allows you to connect with like-minded individuals who share your passion for freedom and patriotism. Show your support and be a part of the movement. God bless Oklahoma. Go to okpatriots.net and start saving money while you save America. okpatriots.net. Sign up today.
with our stories about merit pay and
Yeah. Okay. So, so the issue of, not trusting the principals to do the right thing. That if they have teachers that are their favorites, that those teachers, whether they are worthy of that merit pay, would get that pay. And so, I know this, not just from my experience, but also from having conversations with teachers. And I said, so let me just make sure that I'm understanding what you are telling me. And this is a conversation that I had with a couple of different teachers while I was in the legislature. And I said, you would rather you and the person next door to you make the exact amount of money the same, um, and not get merit pay, even though you show up early, you always have your lesson plans turned in on time, you stay late, you're dedicated, you do professional development, you go to conferences and learn and put everything into it, that you would rather make the same amount of money as the neighbor next door who shows up right as the bell is ringing, leaves as soon as the bell rings, and puts in just the minimal effort. You'd rather make the same amount of money. And maybe obviously the outcomes are going to be different for the two different teachers, right? And they said yes. And I said, why is that? And they gave me the same reason as what I'm saying, about the principal who said, you know, anybody whose kids don't perform passing the test, if you don't have the majority of your kids passing the test, you're no better than a 3.
so in the corporate world, there's favoritism. And there's all of those exact same scenarios. But as you're saying what you're saying, there's an element missing, and that is kids. So my corporate head says, "Oh, Sherrie, goodness, you have to advocate for bonuses in the corporate world. There's little after company drinks or things that happen behind the scenes that cause someone else to be promoted or to be a boss favorite. They go in and advocate for themselves, and it can be very Shark Tank ish in the corporate world. They're going after those bonuses and after that pay.
Yeah.
What makes it different in the teaching world is I still do believe teachers, you should be advocating for that, and you should be pushing for that. You should not be letting that go. But you're there together all day, and you're trying to create an environment of harmony for all these children across the state. So it's not easy to have a Shark Tank type world at school, because if you're fighting your coworker for a bonus, but then you've got these little kids, you got to put on the happy face and sing your ABCs and dance down the hall. I can see where that would be a challenge, but it kind of reminds me of a socialist environment, because if everybody is making the same, and are people going to keep performing well, or are they going to start to just kind of go, well, that teacher next door to me comes in at 10, every day, misses all the time, doesn't care if his classroom's covered, outcomes are terrible, and he just makes the same amount. So why should I put in those extra hours and time? And we're blessed in Oklahoma to have teachers that are called and don't think about it that way and don't work that way, but there has to be a solution there.
Yeah.
And I know, I would think that maybe part of the solution is going to a better district. I don't know what you would define a better district, but going to a different district where things could be better for you as a teacher, or I don't know, but that's very, very challenging, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. And what I will tell you is that that buildings where, and this takes me to the 4-day school issue, and I know you and I have had this conversation, that it doesn't really, in a lot of those districts, that the 4-day school issue is not going to keep a teacher at that district if they don't have the support of their principal. And I have worked in buildings where the principal had their favorites. It was very obvious who their favorites were. And it was a very toxic environment, and just not a pleasant place to work. And so the turnover is great in those schools and in those districts where the leadership is not supportive, and where the culture is toxic as well. And so I believe that, and maybe, and you may know this answer, maybe piloting the merit pay system somewhere where, if you could get a district that would agree to piloting the merit pay system, and just see what the difference would be between the outcomes and about the stability of the faculty, because that's the other piece, that kids, they do better when they know the faculty, and when there's a stability about the faculty. Being in fifth grade, you always had the fourth graders that, towards the end of the year, like right now during this time, the kids are thinking about who they want for their teacher the next year. And, it's one of those things where, walking down the hall, I always had the fourth graders coming up to me, I want to be in your classroom next year. And, that would be great to be able to take them all, but you can't take them all. But that's how who those teachers are that have a good respect with the children and with the faculty, and they're not divisive and all of those things, when you've got kids that actually want to be in those teachers' classrooms. And so we've kind of gotten off topic.
But that's a lot to think about. And these are the things that we do think about when you're trying to create better outcomes.
Yeah.
Every time I think, okay, here's the problem, 5 more pieces pop up.
Yes.
That relate to that. So it is so multifaceted.
It is.
And it's not it's just not cut and dry. There's so much dealing with children. I think adds a whole other element of to that work.
Yeah. It is. There really is so much, and then you have to think about the kids that come from homes where they don't get read to, they don't get talked to a lot, and that makes a huge difference in the differences in the kids that come from communities where there's not a whole lot of emphasis put on education. And one of the things that I learned during my internship as a principal was the lack of trust that some parents have, especially in those lower income communities.
Trust for schools or teachers or administrators or all?
The whole system. Yeah. That if they were let down as a student, they remember that. And now as parents, they don't trust the system. And so that's the reason why you don't have a lot of support from some of those parents. I'm not going to say all of them, but from some of those parents, is because you lack the trust between the parents and the schools because of what happened to them when they were in school. So I think it is time for a break.
It is, and that brings us to a whole other subject. But
yes,
we'll see you guys after the break.
Yeah.
Hey there, I'm JJ Humphrey, and I'm inviting you to join me on a journey every week with my podcast, Elephant in the Room. This is where we dig deep, expose corruption, stand up for taxpayers, and defend your rights. Every single episode. But I can't do this alone. That's where you come in. By signing up and supporting this mission for as little as $5 a month, you'll help me continue to shine a light on the issues that matter most to all of us. With your support, we can reach more people, uncover more truths, and fight the battles that need fighting. Join the movement. Be a part of Elephant in the Room. Thank you, and I'll see you on the inside.
Everyone, we are talking today about early childhood outcomes and some of the things that impact that. There's 2 pieces of legislation that are going through the House and the Senate right now that seem to be conflicting with one another, and so we've had a conversation about that. I hope that if you're just now tuning in, that you get an opportunity to go back and watch the entire episode so that you can be aware of those and maybe reach out to your legislator, your senator and your House member, and talk to them about your thoughts on the differences between the adjunct and emergency certifieds and the requirements that we're now trying to put on our teacher candidates, where you've got people in these classrooms If they're emergency certified and adjunct, they don't have the same requirements as what they're trying to put onto our teacher candidates that are going through the teacher training programs. So let's talk a little bit about your experience. Remind me again. Did you own a daycare? Or
Yes, I had a back in the early 2000s. The state was just rolling out their 3-star program. That time it was 3-star,
Mhm.
and I was
It's 5-star now, right?
yes,
Yes.
and
Okay.
I think it's 5.
I think it is.
I was in the under number 10 of getting qualified, and I had almost a perfect score when she came out to do my um, assessment, and I was heavily pregnant with number 4,
Oh wow.
and so I had number 3 who wasn't all the way potty trained. So I laid him on the floor, mom, kid, laid him on the
Mhm.
floor to change his diaper, and I got marked off for that because they need to be up on a surface for
Oh,
their
even though it was your own kid.
yes, for
Interesting.
their humility or their to not make them feel so bad about not throwing a kid on the floor. But so that's of all the things I could have been marked off for. That was my one mark off. But I was telling Sherry on the break, I was in training all the time. I was in training with OU Early Childhood Center. There was a gingerbread daycare in Guthrie, and she did trainings for it was a child care association. She did trainings for us. And I mean, I was in training all the time. I had to keep up. I was very stringent in those early childhood.
Now, let me ask you something. Are these requirements that you had from the State Department? It's
DHS,
DHS.
DHS. And I have noticed the requirements for child care centers are higher and more stringent than the requirements for our schools. And I'm still trying to wrap my brain around that. So if
Hmm.
your 4-year-old is at a daycare center, the requirements there are higher than your 4-year-old at a pre-K. And I
And we
think
hear
we
a
need
lot
to
about
do.
that, don't we?
We do, and we have some wonderful child care associations in Oklahoma
Hmm.
that are fighting those battles to make it more of an even playing field. Because
Yeah.
as you see schools start to pull uh, kids away from child care centers as they're implementing, Norman's implementing a daycare program for
Ooh,
teachers.
I am against putting
So the
three-year-olds
whole
in pre-K.
landscape's changing, yeah,
Yeah.
rapidly.
Yes, yes, it is. And so that's interesting. I would be interested in looking at the expectations for early childhood daycare centers and early childhood public ed
Mm,
and see what the differences between those two are and whether or not the requirements for the early childhood daycares are more stringent than the early childhood. And that takes us back to the issue of the adjunct and the emergency certifieds
yeah,
going into the 4-year-old and the 5-year-old programs in pre-K and then kindergarten and first grade. Because if we are putting more expectations on our daycare centers than we are on our early childhood educators, that are adjunct in early childhood, I mean, or I'm sorry, adjunct and emergency certified. I have a problem with that, and so we definitely need to be looking at these. And what I realized in doing the research for our conversation today is that the education law, Title 70, is kind of all over the place.
it's all over the place. And like government is so strange because you'll have all these silos of departments that don't ever talk to each other. Like you think if someone was going to change something at the college where teachers are being taught, that they might reach out to the people at the State Board of Education and say, hey, does this affect you guys? How does it
Hmm.
affect you guys?
Hmm.
And just have some roundtable discussions.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because they're in education, especially. I think I told you guys the story of last year we made it where only nurses could do laser hair treatments and laser treatments of that sort. And so all the people that had gone and got a degree from, or
Hmm.
a certification, I'm sorry, a certification from their local career tech or tech school, all of a sudden they were out of a job and a career, even though they'd been doing it for years because the law changed to make it. So these things are happening and they're affecting everyday citizens. And we're hoping to start getting in front of those, getting the word out, because of course people could have been advocating to not have that law happen. They didn't realize it was going out.
Yeah. And so, in doing the research for this, I started pulling law, looking for, okay, where does it say that, emergency certified and adjunct teachers have to have this qualification? And where does it talk about teacher candidates that are coming out of teacher ed programs? And here's what I ended up with. I mean, how many are here? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 different places in law. So one of them is certificate of qualifications, unlawful to teach without.
Okay.
This has a set of requirements. Then there is a pilot program for new pathways to teacher certification. This was passed last year in 2024. Then there is legislative declaration, the interpretation of the act, which is the Oklahoma Teacher Prep Act. And so there's different parts of the law that talks about that. Then there is competencies and methods to be incorporated into the teacher prep program. Then there's qualifications for teacher employment and certification, and then criteria for approval and accreditation of teacher education programs. And so they all say, it feels like they all say something different. And, just slight differences. Some of them are major differences. Some of them, and I don't even know what I did with the one that talked about emergency. Oh, yeah. And then here's one on seeing the following versions. This was emergency and provisional certificates, which I believe also includes adjunct. And so there's so much law that needs to be gone through and evaluated to determine whether or not they're covering all of their bases, and that this law isn't actually saying something different than what this one, like what we're seeing right now in these two pieces of legislation. And so I don't feel like it's fair that they are putting this test onto the young people who are spending their money and the time and doing it right, going through, all of their hours that they have to spend in the classroom, their student teaching and those things. And then you're throwing this out there for somebody who has absolutely no training to be able to go in. Now I believe they have to commit to some kind of program within 3 years. But if they go into an early childhood classroom and they spend 3 years in that early childhood classroom before they have to start a teacher prep program, they've spent 3 years teaching students and they don't know what they're doing. They haven't been trained in the process for teaching reading, and they haven't had to provide that. I mean, so if you think about it, they're how many years? At least 2 years away from having to take that test in order to prove that they can teach reading. Yeah. And by that time, they've taught 5 years in the early childhood classroom, and that is just not. It's not the way it should be. So is it time for us to take another break?
Yes.
Yep.
Welcome back.
Okay, we're back. All right. Well, this has been a great conversation. I feel like we just scraped the surface.
There's so much, and there's so much that,
yeah.
Hopefully, as we continue these conversations, maybe we can start to break it down or layer on your knowledge of how it works. That's what happened to me. It took, of course, 2 full years in the State Board of Education before I really got the rhythm down and understood the things that I thought that needed to be changed.
Yeah.
So it's such a beast.
Yeah. And I think that we have some experts that we could bring in to continue this conversation, because we with Liberty Hill, Kendra and I, we want to be solution minded.
That's right.
We want to come up with the, well, if this is what's happening, then what do we have to do to fix that? That's the way we want to be thinking, or we want to be forward thinking with a reformation of education, and taking it back really to what it was before all of this, everything started getting messed up.
It's such a fad industry. I've never seen an industry that jumps on the newest fad. And we always encourage you guys to listen to the podcast Sold a Story to understand the rhythm
Yes.
of the landscape of education, what parts politics plays in it.
Yes.
All kinds of things that go into the shaping of what we have currently. And it is, words are changed rapidly. I'm having to ask people in the education, when I'm talking to them in education fields, okay, tell me the definition and how you're using that word. Because it's a word that has a different meaning for me.
Yeah.
And so I want to be sure that we're on the same page. Anthropology is a new key term that to some means whole child. SEL is the whole child anthropology of it. So saying the history of the child, and they're using the word anthropology inside of STEAM. The A in STEAM used to be arts.
Now it's anthropology.
To some.
Oh, okay. Well,
so trying to keep up with all that is just a full-time job in itself, the way the language is changing. And so defining the terms, making sure you understand what people are talking about, of course, advocating for your child, your school district. Board members are key here. You want board members that understand these terms, board members that understand the playing field and the roles and
their responsibility.
Yeah. Above all.
Yeah. That's really good. So I think we've got some experts that we could bring on to continue these conversations.
Did you have any tea to spill today? What do we know? Some new candidates into the state superintendent race. I noticed maybe we're up to 4 or 5. Wow.
The last I saw was 3.
I'm at
Rob Miller and then 2
Jerry Griffin.
Others. Okay, that's a name I haven't heard. So that means
Tulsa.
4.
And then
and there's
a
2
Native
others.
American lady out of Tahlequah.
Okay.
Sorry, I can't remember her name, or I would give her a shout out.
I know I have a picture in my phone of the other 2, but I don't know. I think it's probably going to be a pretty wide field. I believe there's probably a legislator maybe that might jump in the race. I think it all depends on, for some people, I think it might depend on what Ryan Walters is going to do, and no speculation there. We hope
the governor's race is heating up as well.
Yes.
So
there's 4 there.
There's so much power in all of these seats.
Yeah.
I hope everyone's doing their homework.
Yes. Yeah. And one of the things that I would suggest is not to jump on anybody's campaign just yet. Wait and see what the field looks like. Wait and see how many are in the field, who those people are, what those their not requirements. What's the word? What are their qualifications? That was the word I was looking for. Yeah. What are their qualifications?
I think in Europe they say requirements. So it's that London trip that's thrown your language off.
Yeah. Well, that was fun. That was a completely different subject. Altogether. A lot of interesting things learned there about their government too, for sure. So when we run out of education things to talk about, I don't think
will
that's
we
possible.
ever? We were like, we really want to be
I don't think
more
that's
diverse
possible
on this podcast and talk about different things, and it just keeps going back to education. But that is the key, and it's hot topic right now.
It is, and parents need to know these things. Voters need to know these things. Anybody who cares about education, and I have not talked to anyone who doesn't care about education.
Well, we've got something we're gonna be rolling out, hopefully by May 1st. Another little project we're working on. I think it's going to be a lot of fun and really shake up education.
Yeah,
I can't wait. So we'll give you a little teaser there.
Yep. Yeah.
So let's tell those bills again. So we have, if you guys want to check these proposed legislation out, we have House Bill 2125 that's now at the Senate, and Senate Bill 841 that's now at the House. We don't know if they've come out of committee yet because we haven't gotten that far, but we do know that they are conflicting. And so you may look at those and see what you think. And
yeah. And again, I'm not opposed to the emergency certifieds and to the adjunct, but allowing them into an early childhood classroom without any experience and without the training to teach young people to read, I believe that is a bad move for the state of Oklahoma. So
I can agree. I feel that way too.
Yeah. And I don't think it's fair to our young people who are going through the college of eds. And that was the other thing that I was going to mention is that, doing these types of laws could actually hurt our College of Educations across
Creating
the
further
state,
shortages.
creating further shortages because people are, if they're being allowed to just get any old degree and then go into a classroom and they're not qualified, that's part of the reason that we're seeing the downfall. I mean, most of it is based on the curriculum and the type of program that's being taught, but the unqualified teachers exacerbate that problem, make it worse.
Well, we'll certainly be advocating and trying to get a hold of the people that we know in the meantime, and we hope you guys do too. And I guess we'll see you next Monday on Liberty Hill.
Yes.